I've mentioned this passage a few times before, but what the heck, I'm going to do it again. In The Bell Jar, Sylvia Plath perfectly captures the sense of fleeting time, of paralysis by analysis that pervades the 20-something of today. As our protagonist reflects on her life, she sees everything as a fig tree with a dizzying amount of branches. And at the tip of each branch was a wonderful future, a lover, a family, an exciting new country. On this branch, she would become a famous poet, and on this one, she lived in South America. There were overwhelming options. I saw myself sitting in the crotch of this fig tree, starving to death, just because I couldn't make up my mind which of the figs I would choose. I wanted each and every one of them, but choosing one meant losing all the rest. And as I sat there, unable to decide, the figs began to wrinkle and go black, and one by one they plopped to the ground at my feet. It's a blessing until it's not, to have boundless opportunities while you are still young, and the world is your oyster. And then your 30s hit, and you're babysitting your friends' kids. Or maybe you're regretting breaking up with that person for, in retrospect, pretty shallow reasons. Perhaps you hit that dreadful age where you stop exploring and you start committing, and still within you there broods this nasty feeling that in some way you've settled. This video is sponsored by Brilliant. One of the best ways to discover who you are is through embracing your curiosity. But this can be scary. Learning new things requires making lots of mistakes, and that's not always fun. But what if the process of learning could be fun? That's why I love Brilliant. Brilliant is where you learn by doing, with thousands of interactive lessons in math, data analysis, programming, and AI. Firstly, Brilliant is a highly effective way to learn. They use a hands-on approach that highlights the fundamentals so you don't miss anything important. Brilliant also helps you build problem-solving skills that go beyond just memorizing facts. This makes you a far more effective thinker who is capable of applying what you learn to real-life situations. And Brilliant is also great for developing a daily learning habit. You can build real knowledge in minutes every day. Say goodbye to mindless scrolling. I've been really interested in learning about how LLMs work, especially with the rise of AI. Brilliant's course on LLMs gets you fully immersed in the world of real language models and helps you understand the importance of training data. To try everything Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, visit brilliant.org/Sisyphus55 or click on the link in the description. You'll also get 20% off an annual premium subscription. By wanting everything, we can end up with nothing, and social media makes this even worse. Hyper-rich, hyper-attractive, and hyper-interesting people that hit our eyeballs every 20 seconds desensitize us to the comparatively mediocre partners and friends we have settled on. We might hesitate entering a relationship because the grass is always greener with that next potential Tinder swipe. We might put off a master's degree because we aren't really sure that this is what we'd like to do 100%. Even picking up a book is too much of a commitment. Look at all of those other books you've never finished. Why waste your time with something mediocre when you can spend your life sampling little bits of everything? This can result in a general anxiety. With no stable sense of what we would like, we live in a state of constant panic and, more often than not, let life do the deciding for us. Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, writes Kierkegaard. The freedom we feel in adolescence and beyond is as exciting as it is terrifying. What great power we have to shape our lives. But what if we make the wrong choices? What if what we have invested in fails? Why settle on anything if we're just going to end up hurt? Robert Goodin, in his book on settling, however, is firmly on team settling. He contrasts it with something we tend to hold with higher regard: striving. Striving is fun. It's the Rocky montage we imagine when the hero has to train for something. It's when we set our minds to something important and valuable. Striving, although certainly filled with long nights and hard work, frees us from that Kierkegaardian anxiety. We know what we are doing. However, as Goodin notes, striving firstly requires settling. The hero does have to settle their sights on something in order to strive for it. This is a somewhat obvious point. Before we can strive for something, we need to do some striving to determine whether what we are striving for is worth it. That is also called the process of settling. The issue is that for many, settling carries with it a negative connotation. You might see it as a form of compromise, of declaring that you do not deserve more than this. However, this is a trick of the mind. But do we really have to settle? Goodin sees the use of settling mostly in its fixity. By providing some stability, some sense of order, we feel a little less anxious. We can strive for our goals with relative confidence and determination without constantly doubting ourselves. We should, of course, still be on the lookout to have our minds changed and to keep our options open, but this should be, well, we are undertaking something, and this sort of skepticism should not hold us in decision purgatory. But what if I choose the wrong thing to settle on? You 100% will, especially the younger you are. As we experience more and more, we learn more about ourselves, our values, our preferences, the things that make us feel alive. Early on in life, we have a relatively limited sample of experiences to choose from. One of the fruits of settling is that you commit to certain things, relationships, careers, degrees, and fully see them through. During this process, you discover more about yourself and the world, accruing what the psychologist Meg Jay calls identity capital, the collection of skills, experiences, values, and knowledge we accumulate through an exploratory period of committing and growing. If anything, the early period of your life should be characterized by a growing list of odd jobs, failed relationships, and awe-inducing experiences. At this stage, it matters less what you choose, and more so that you choose something, anything, to gather the necessary data about yourself. In doing so, you can fine-tune your settling capacities for when you are older and do have to make those harder decisions. Success shouldn't even be on your mind at this age. But why choose anything to begin with? Nietzsche's aphorism that you should become what you are has some relevance here. Isn't that what you would like most? To become what you are? But what does this even mean? For Nietzsche, it involves a process of wandering, of plunging fully into life with no real frame of why or how. In Ecce Homo, he writes, to become what one is, one must not have the faintest idea of what one is. It is this radical self-doubt that should urge us to pick something and see through with it, if nothing else but to better understand who we are. We might fail. We might realize halfway through that this isn't what we wanted, or maybe at the end it all works out and we realize then that this was a complete waste of time. But it wasn't. It's exactly what life is, and it's the process of becoming yourself at its purest form. Nietzsche's point may be that the process of self-discovery requires an undoing of the self-knowledge that you assume you already have. Becoming is the ongoing process of losing and finding yourself. It is this beautiful idea that the mountain climber does not climb the mountain to reach the top, but rather commits themselves to reaching the top as an excuse to climb the mountain. Life is all about finding which mountain peaks will give us the most scenic, challenging, and enjoyably meaningful climb. Here I think of the insight of Siddharta, written by Herman Hesse. Our protagonist, Siddharta, has spent the majority of his life in pursuit of enlightenment, or nirvana. He has studied the scriptures, lived brutally as an ascetic, and even met the Buddha. In each instance, Siddharta was guided by an inner voice, urging him to follow his own path. Even in his encounter with the Buddha, and in spite of his praise for his teachings, Siddharta turns away. And at one point he even feels completely hopeless. Everything he had pursued has led him to a dead end. What a waste of time. Siddharta stares at the river in front of him and is struck with an important insight. He saw that the water continually flowed, and yet it was always there. It was always the same, and yet every moment it was new. Life, too, is an endless process of moving towards something, and it is this constant motion that sustains life itself. Siddharta understood that to frame his life as seeking something was damaging. He was seeking the perfect thing to settle on that would give him enlightenment. In doing so, he felt like a failure, unable to solve his existence. But it was only when he realized that life is a process of finding rather than seeking, that his whole being is composed of all of these experiences and failures and lost loves and new friends, where he found enlightenment. Choose your rock. It will inevitably roll back down, and that's okay. It's part of the process of becoming what you are.